Hello, this is JD Frost. Welcome to the Daily Ledger Podcast. How to form entities, what you need to know about forming entities, and specifically, this episode is why do you need to form an entity? What is the purpose? This episode being about why do we form entities. The main reason you form entities is for liability protection. That's the main reason that you do it. You want to create a business that has protection against any lawsuits, any accidents. You want to be able to protect your personal assets and keep them separate from your business assets and your business liabilities. Because what most entrepreneurs, and even I don't even realize this every day, how much risk we have, how much we are putting out there, how much money we have invested in our business, how much liability we have. And the key thing for you to understand is it's not really the liability that you know, that you're aware of, it's the liability that you don't know. Us in the accounting world call this an unknown liability. This is something that you're not even aware of. You don't even know that it might happen. That's why you have insurance, and it's a great thing to have insurance. And some entrepreneurs, small business owners, choose to pick an entity that doesn't have liability coverage, liability protection, because they have insurance, an umbrella policy, something that's going to protect them against possible lawsuits, against possible accidents, unknown liabilities. And that's okay. That's just fine. You see a lot of people form general partnerships so they don't have to file state tax returns. And they have an umbrella coverage for that asset that's inside that. But most people, and most of the time, I'm going to advise you to create an entity if you have a business. You need to create an entity if you have real estate. You need to create an entity. Oh, I get this question all the time. Hey, I've got 3 or 4 rental properties. They're single-family homes. Should I create an entity? Yes, you should. You should not own a home that is up for rent that you are leasing personally, because you never know what's going to happen at that house. You don't know who is going to lease that place, and if they're going to throw a party and somebody dies. Who knows? I mean, it's an unknown liability. That's why you want to create an entity. Entrepreneurs, small business owners, we all have liabilities that we have no idea can come up at any point in time. And so the main reason why you want to form an entity is for that liability protection. The second reason that you want to form an entity is for tax purposes. Now, an LLC, an S-Corp, limited partnerships, they all have their specific tax implications. And the reason for forming an entity is to ensure that these things are taxed correctly. There are some entities that you form that have a more beneficial tax implication for you and your specific situation. But it's difficult for me to sit here on this show and to tell you that this is the one way that you need to form this entity. This is exactly the kind of entity that you need for this specific situation, because the answer to every question in accounting is it depends. Your specific situation depends on what type of entity that you are going to form. Now, what are those things that it depends on? I can tell you that. The type of industry that you're going to form an entity in, the amount of partners that you're going to have in this entity, the ability to have a partner come into the entity and leave the entity will be a determining factor on what to pick, and the amount of liability protection that you want to choose for that entity. Those are the main areas in which you are going to be using the specifics of those questions in order to form a specific entity for your specific situation. That's what it depends on. That's typically what we go through. We're going to ask, what industry is this for? Is it for real estate, or is this an accounting firm, or is this a law firm? Is this a professional organization? JD Frost & Company, we are a PLLC. We're a professional limited liability company. Now, in our first episode, I believe we talked about those actual specific entities, LLCs, limited partnerships, S corps, C corps, sole proprietorships, general partnerships. There are all these different types of entities. What I want you to understand watching this show, this episode, is why it's important to form an entity, and also why it's important to know these other areas, industry, the liability protection that you want, the tax implications that you want, the partners that are coming in and out. How easy or flexible do you want it to be for a partner to come into your entity or leave? Those are the determining factors in choosing an entity. Very, very important to know those things. And the other item that I would add to that is the cost of forming an entity. If you want to form an entity for zero cost at all, that's a sole proprietorship. You just start. It's very easy. You're able to use your social security number to form that entity. You just put a name on it and you're in business. The second easiest is a general partnership. You don't even have to file with the state Secretary of State in order to form a general partnership. You just need a federal ID number, and you can get that through the IRS website. The third least expensive would be partnerships, LLCs, limited partnerships. You have to have an operating agreement. You got to file articles of organization with the Secretary of State. You got to file if you're in Tennessee, you got to file for a Tennessee State F&E account number. And then the most expensive to form would be an S Corp and a C Corp, because you have to issue shares. You have to have stock certificates. You have to have a minute book. A lot more rules have to be followed with an S Corp or a C Corp. And the reason why is because those are ironclad. Like, you are not going to penetrate those entities because of the liability protection. An S Corp, you're actually forming a C Corp, and then you elect to be taxed as an S Corp. We'll get into that later. But what I want you to understand from this episode is you want to form an entity. Why do I want to form an entity? I want to form an entity for liability protection. I want to form an entity for tax implications. I want to form an entity so that I protect my personal assets against unknown liabilities. Because as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we are susceptible to so many unknown liabilities. You can't even put a number on it because you never know what is going to happen. So form entities when you're creating businesses. Thank you for watching this week's episode. And remember, next week, we're going to be talking about how to form an entity. And also comment below if you want to be coached live on this. If you're forming entities or you're thinking about starting a business and you want to talk about this specific subject, comment below and we'll contact you and have you on the show.